How many ways must we see the destruction of this human race? Violence and pain spreading all over this land. There's nothing to gain if we don't have a plan to save this world, save every boy and every girl. Let's pray for the right solution. The right solution. Let's pray for a better way. A better way. Let's pray for a bright tomorrow. Let's pray. Let's pray. Something is wrong. How can we win when we see that our children are killing their friends? We must find a way to erase all this hate. Let's do it right now before it's too late to find a place where everyone will be safe. Come on, let's pray. Let's pray for the right solution. The right solution. A better way. Let's pray for a bright tomorrow. Let's pray. Let's pray. To save this world, right solution for every boy and girl. For a better way. Ooh, yeah. Let's pray for a bright tomorrow. Let's pray. Let's pray. Let's close our eyes. Let's go inside. Let's go deep within. Ask a higher force. What is the cause to create peace and love again? Let's pray for a better way. Let's pray for a bright tomorrow. Let's pray. Let's pray. How many times? How many ways must we see that destruction of this human race? Let's pray for a bright tomorrow. Let's pray. Let's pray. Let's pray. Let's pray. Let's pray for the right solution. Something is wrong. Let's pray for a better way. We see that our children are killing their friends. Let's pray. Tomorrow. Oh, let's we need to pray. Let's pray. Oh, we need to pray. Let's pray for the right solution. Let's pray for a better way. Higher consciousness. Let's go higher. Let's go higher, higher consciousness. Let's go higher in our consciousness. Let's go higher. The time's come for me to change the way I think, to change the way I feel, for me to go beyond what everybody thinks. What everybody says is real. Today I take a step into a time and space of peace and possibility. And here I'm gonna stay until I find my place, my true divinity. Higher consciousness. Let's go higher, higher in our Let's go higher, higher consciousness. Let's go higher.
All right, all right. Peace and blessings, everyone. Peace and blessings.
Let's go higher.
Yes. Definitely time to pray. Find that solution of higher consciousness. That's the great Ankh Ra Amenhotep. Still with us, inspiring thousands of people to find that deep spirituality that we need to address our lives and what's going on in the world. So peace and blessings. Welcome, welcome everyone. Put a 1 in the chat if you're special. I mean, if you're special because this is your first time. Your first time with us on Comedic Legacies broadcast. Your first time with us, perhaps having an opportunity to meet a very, very special person who is responsible for bringing higher consciousness, for bringing comedic spirituality, resurrecting it. All right, welcome Michael Williams, Michelle Lewis Montiel, and we have Ababa Gomez. Nulse is with us. Russ. All right, I'm excited. I'm excited for you. I started this journey, unfortunate, a long time ago. I'm glad you're here to hear about a very, very critical, important topic. Welcome, everybody. Peace and blessings. I see New Jersey's in the house. Facebook is here. What other states do we have here represented? All right. Peace and blessings. All right. Yes. Tonight is such an important topic. DC's in the house, Ohio. Something that is actually an epidemic right now. We heard about a pandemic. Milwaukee's in the house. Tennessee is in the house. Epidemic of grief. Welcome St. Lucia, Indiana, North Carolina, California, Brooklyn, New York, Atlanta, Georgia, Trinidad in the house, Colorado. And misery, you mean Missouri, right? I hear you. All right. What an important topic. You know, here we are in 2023, and a lot of us have lost friends. We've lost loved ones. We've lost family members coming through a historic pandemic throughout the world. In addition to that, we've had a continuing and a compounding of a lot of violence and crime. I'm speaking to you from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States, and like many, many cities across the United States and across the world, just like the song says, we have a generation of people who are losing their lives daily. And those of us that are left behind are faced with what seems to be an impossible future. How do we go on? How do we handle some of the greatest losses when you lose a loved one? And then to compound that, we have an economic situation, a financial situation, a political situation that also, in many cases, may trigger us to grieve, right? Loss of job, loss of income, loss of home, loss of certain dreams and objectives that we thought we might reach at a certain age, you know, because the economy changed. And for some of you like my age, you know, even the fact that we grew up with kind of a sense of progress, a sense of hope. We saw the first to do this and the first to do that. And now it seems like we're moving in a completely different direction. So there's a lot of things out here in this world and in this life that can trigger us to a grief response. And for most of us, we've been taught that that's a natural thing to do. I mean, everybody does it. It seems inescapable not to do it. And in some cases, we've even been taught that if you don't grieve heavily, if your life doesn't pretty much fall apart when you lose somebody dear to them, then maybe you really didn't love them that much. You know, it's kind of like a measure of love, how heavily you grieve. So we're blessed tonight to have with us Nefer, the Shechem or Shechem of the Asarset Society. I'm excited for those of you that are meeting him for the first time. He's a prolific author. He's a teacher. He's a diviner. He actually brought forth the Meduniter Oracle as well as the 7-volume Meduniter series, which took the mysteries out of the so-called mystery system. And he's a master of meditation, a teacher of meditation, who in his most recent project to find ways to help us and to help the world, he's developed an online digital course called Ma'at, the 11 Laws of Health, Wealth, and Success. It's a comedic meditation system, all delivered to you right on your mobile device. So he's put in this year 50 years of work, and some would call it sacrifice, self-sacrifice. He's gone most of this time without compensation for teaching and counseling every week for the last 50 years. And he's an authority on spiritual development. And I know that you're going to be powerfully enriched by what he has to say about this very, very important and critical topic. So at this time, I'd like you to help me to welcome to the stage of Comedic Legacy, Nefer, Amen, Shechem or Shechem of the Asarset Society. Anecharak, sir. Anecharak to you. Power, peace, and blessings.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting this episode.
Well, I appreciate
I would just like to correct something you said.
Sure.
That I work without compensation. Oh, no. The Most High has been compensating me every single day.
You're on the best payroll then.
Yes, sir.
Two. So I really appreciate you being here all these years, but especially tonight. As you know, and you were insightful enough to bring this topic forward, that there are millions of people grieving all over the world, and all kind of causes and reasons why. So I know the audience is piling in here. We have a few hundred people in the webinar room, as well as a number of us, peace and blessings, on Facebook and on our YouTube channels. So, sir, you have the stage, and we're all very much intrigued to hear what you have to say about this powerful and important topic.
Very, very good. You know, as CNN introduces, new alert. Grief can kill you. You see that. And so the thing is, grief is pandemic. It has been defined as an emotional response to losing a dear one or something that is very dear to you. A profound sorrow, pain that comes to you, from losing something that's dear, especially someone. You see that? And that definition in itself is problematic. It's incomplete, it's misguided. You see that? Imagine that let's say, COVID or smallpox or the flu were misdefined. We're not understood as being viruses that have a high mortality rate. Suppose, let's say, smallpox, COVID, tuberculosis, and so on were defined, as a mere rash, on your skin, a mere, cold, a non-fatal cold. You see that? Imagine if it had been defined that way, then nobody would bother to study. No government would spend billions of dollars to combat it. You see that? If these illnesses had been misdefined, you follow what I'm saying, as mere rashes or a passing fever, cough, and so on. Because they were properly defined and understood as killers, proper attention was given to them, to these illnesses, by authorities, by the public, by scientists, and so on. So it will come as a shocker for people to understand that lots of people are getting very sick from grief and dying from it. You see that? Okay? As a matter of fact, there is a science of grief, okay, with algorithms that were created by scientists, for the past, let's say, 60 years or so, that have been used quite successfully to prognosticate and predict the likelihood of somebody coming down with a serious illness or dying from grief. You see that? Okay? And once we get into the understanding, of this algorithm, we will come to understand that grief is really a very serious, disorder, very serious disease that we have to strike an alarm bell. You see that? It's defined as the emotional response, a deep pain, a deep sorrow that follows the loss of a loved one. So here we have this growing gun violence in America. We have, people, being assaulted, raped, mistreated. Lots of people, young men, especially dying in the war theaters, coming back with, the grief, loss of their friends, their careers. Lots of young men left America to go to war with dreams, and they come back totally incapacitated to live those dreams, realize those dreams, and so on. Loss of sons and daughters to violence from different quarters. All over the world, all over Africa, there are these civil wars, and all over the world, all of these immigrants, the immigrants that are leaving their home and their family members, they're just not facing the dangers of the Darien, part of Panama. They are suffering of grief with every step they take because they're leaving their beloved country that they grew up in. They're leaving their friends and families behind. They say with the expectations of coming to be able to work and send money back home and send for the loved ones, only to encounter another set of blockages coming from, American government to agencies not planning properly to admit them and not receiving them properly, and so on. So this definition of grief, that it is an emotional pain, an emotional response of deep sorrow, and so forth, following the loss of someone or something dear to you, a spouse, a child, a career that has vanished. You went for too many years to become an IT master, only to find that your country has outsourced all the IT jobs, to cheaper lands and things of that nature. So now you are grieving. And the problems due to the misdefinition of grief, you see, makes you believe that grief is something that you do when in reality something happens to you. But because you have been made to believe that grieving is a badge of caring, grieving shows that you care, you inadvertently, you see, nurture the grief, which is really an illness. It's like if you had tuberculosis and you nurture the behavior and the actions that make that tuberculosis worse. You see that? And that's what people are doing. Grief is not something that you do. It's something that happens to you, something very bad, very evil that's happening to you that you need to understand and take proper actions. In 1967, two psychologists, the name of Holmes and Rahe, that's Holmes, and the other one, Rahe, Rahe, they came up with what's called the stress scale. Write that down, Holmes and Rahe stress scale. At the end of this, webinar, you must go, you must Google this information or Bing it or whatever, and go to the website, you see, and follow the algorithms you can put in. There's a little one of the websites, actually have a calculator that you can calculate, your likelihood of getting very ill or even dying if you've experienced certain, situations that cause a stress response within you in the past 12 months. That's heavy. You see that? As the young people say, that's dope. You see that? I don't know why they say good things are dope, but hey, we used to say things similar in our days too, right? So the Holmes and Rahe stress scale, has an algorithm that gives points to different, adversities in people's life, like the death of a spouse. They gave it 100 points. Divorce is 23. That is, us, keeping in mind, we talk about the divorce where you were not ready for it, and so on. Same thing with a separation, 63. Okay, being incarcerated, 63. That will also depend on, where you were incarcerated or for what reasons, for your unjust, but 63 points. Personal injury or illness, 53 points. Marriage, getting married, 50 points. Losing a job, 47 points. So, and there are 40 such events, life events, that have been given, scores. That if you add up, let's say you had 5 or 6 of these events, let's say death of a spouse, that's 100 points. Then now you were also, incarcerated at 63 points. You also, let's say, having serious illness, that is 53 points. You also lost your job, 47 points, and so forth. So let's say all in 1 year, you had a number of events that together add up to 300 points. Then you have an extremely high, likelihood of dying from the grief itself. You see that, all becoming very, very ill. You see that? So let's say that, in the same year that your spouse died and you lost your job and so forth, and other things happen in your life, incarceration, defamation or whatever, that grief, the pathology, the physiological mechanism behind that grief will accelerate the death from the cancer, will accelerate the high blood pressure leading you to death. It is this factor of grief, which is really a form of stress. You see that, which most people don't recognize as such. Okay. Why many people cannot get rid of grief, why people, some people, cancer go into remission and other people's cancer goes into accelerated death. And they think it's because they did XYZ from the cancer when it was just simply that they were very peaceful and calm, through their various life challenges and so on. You see that? The spiritual factor, which does not come into the thinking of the majority of people. So the thing, keeping in mind that grief is not, if I say that grief is the response of deep pain and sorrow, for someone or something that is lost, that can lead to death or serious illness, depending on how many such events are happening in your life at one time. You see that? Should be a major concern for the medical profession. You see that? You turn your TV on, you see all of these ads for drugs, for high blood pressure, for diabetes, for skin rashes, for replacing your teeth and so forth. Nobody comes on, no doctors, no medical institutions coming on TV saying, if you have experienced grief, in the past 12 months, along with so and so and so, you need to come in and get a checkup and get professional advice. With all of the grief that we're experiencing today, with, people not being able to feed their families, along with, people dying from all of these gun violence and all of these other criminal activities, and thefts and defamation and so on, concern over, the loss of, your future. Some people are living with stolen futures. Think about that. Loss of their, the realization of their dreams for the future. Put them in a grief situation. They're just not worrying. They're grieving over because, they were enjoying, what was supposed to be. That's been now taken away from them. You see that? So the thing is that there should be, grief should be a major social, discussion. It should be a major, medical, item. Nobody's talking about it because it is not understood. It has been misdefined, which makes you ignore it, thinking that it's something that you should do as opposed to something evil happening to you. You see that? Knowing that there has been solutions for thousands of years. Think about it. War is not nothing new. People have been losing families left and right due to wars for the past, as old as mankind. You see that? And the response to grief in ancient Egypt and ancient societies were meditations and rituals, and things of that nature. That's how they were able to maintain and grow their civilization. If the number of wars, if the kind of wars, were not dealt with by the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Greeks, and the Romans, and things of that nature, the grief would have ripped these civilizations apart. The way it is, ripping apart, this world today. All this mental illness that you're seeing today behind, all the unexplained violence comes from, in many cases, not say all, but in many cases, grief, along with its sister, stress, so-called stress illnesses. You see that? So in tonight's webinar, I'm going to give you some pointers that you can follow. You see that? Okay? So that you can, begin, to take actions to help yourself. Okay? And maybe, we can work together. I will talk about that at the end of this, workshop here. We can, work together to address this epidemic, actually this pandemic, because loss of loved ones is an international scourge. So let's begin to debunk the ill definition that is misguiding people, in their approach, the way they're looking at at grief. The formal definition of grief is that it is a deep sorrow, a deep pain, okay, in response to the loss of someone or something dear. If you go and dig deep into, essays on this definition, they will say it's natural. It cannot be avoided. And the truth is that it is not natural to who we are meant to be. It's natural to what we have been in the past. Okay? Before we, decode that and unpack that, let's talk about the informal definition of grief. Colloquially, we say things like, "Oh, you're grieving me out. You're grieving me. You see that? So and so, caused me a lot of grief." You're talking about being annoyed. You're using grief as a synonym for being annoyed or troubled. Even if the trouble and annoyance was light, you're grieving me. Okay, you're causing me grief here, and so on. So these ill definitions mask and they hide the true nature of grief. You see that? If you have an injury, you fell and broke your knees, you see that, broke your bones, you would say, "Oh, I have a physical illness. I need to go get, medical, help, assistance. I can't ignore this. I cannot deal with this, by myself." Well, my beloved, action that you must take when you are suffering from grief, okay, you need to see a professional. You need to see someone who is either medically or socially capable and certified by their successful programs to assist you. I dare say that 99.9% of people cannot deal with grief by themselves. They don't even know what it is to start with. You see that? So let us give you a proper definition and description of grief. Before I give you the verbiage, let me first speak, let's lead up to it by understanding that when you're grieving, you're not feeling joyful, you're not feeling peaceful, you're not feeling relaxed and calm, you're not feeling good. Feeling joyful and feeling good and calm and relaxed, even in the face of challenges, is the result of certain parts of your brain manufacturing certain biochemicals, certain, neurotransmitters, led by dopamine and by serotonin. Dopamine is what the Chinese medicine will call the yang mood factor, that feeling joyful, energized, get up and go, mentally sharp and psychologically focused and and ready to take a risk and enjoying living and achieving and so on. And then it's the daytime action chemical. When your brain, the substantia nigra in your brain and all the structure are not producing enough dopamine, you don't have the feeling. You cannot get the feeling, with simple measures. You become a slave to the deficiency of that neurotransmitter. So that's a physiological problem. You see that? Meaning that loss of joy, loss of you know, peace, and the harmonious feeling, the optimism, the ability to get out there and live your life with gusto depends on a physical, you know, event happening in your brain. If that physical event was causing you depression, which it does, if it was likely, let's say, you know, it's no different from not producing insulin, which gives you diabetes. You will never say that diabetes is an emotional, you know, problem, even though you will have certain emotions along attached to it. You say that diabetes is caused by a lack of insulin. I'm suffering a physical illness. Well, my beloved, you know, when your dopamine production drops, you see, it becomes depleted. You see that, which could have been caused by too much, you know, consumption of alcohol, tobacco, and other recreational drugs. You see that. What they do, they make your, you know, your dopamine secretion and production organs, tissues, you know, go on hyperdrive. And then now on top of it comes now, you know, a traumatic event, loss of a loved one or loss of a job, okay? And your brain cannot produce enough, you see, dopamine to keep you joyful. So that's where you fall into that, you know, deep sorrow. Meaning the deep sorrow is not, it's an emotional thing, but it's caused by a physical thing. I coined a word for that. I call it, you know, somatopsychic illness. You've heard of psychosomatic illness, where the mind and the psyche creates a physical problem. Well, there's a psychical illness. You know, it's a new word that I'm coining here. You know, psychotic, illness. Okay, where the brain creates the psychological state, which is not new. It's well known. Okay, the problem is that the doctors and the scientists that are trying to bring this to the foreground are not supported, because the medical industry is controlled by people who want you to take drugs for your grief and your stress and things of that nature. Okay, they don't want you to understand that, you know, there is a simple, you know, physical event that's causing you to lose your joy, your positivity, your get up and go. Then there's another neurotransmitter called serotonin. You see that makes you relax, makes you sleep well, peaceful, calm, you know, digest your food well, you know, recondition your body for the next day. That's the yin part that the Chinese medicine will call the yin part of your being. You see that? So the yang is dopamine, the yin is serotonin. And the serotonin, let's say, is replenished by certain amino acids, tyrosine and so forth. And many of you, even though you eat lots of meat and drink lots of milk, okay, you are still, you know, dopamine amino acid deficient, because you are burning up. You're cooking to death, you know, the meat, you know, creating, you know, problems, you know, you're degenerating the nutritional value, you know, of that meat that you're eating. Many of you who are vegetarian, vegans like me, you don't get enough good quality protein in your diet because you do not know, you know, how to properly select your amino acids. We'll have a course on that, a webinar on that one of these days soon. But the thing is, you see, lots of people, meat eaters included, are suffering from an amino acid deficiency, okay? And, you know, and that dopamine production starts with L-tyrosine, and so forth, you know, and that's part of the ADD problem. You need more L-tyrosine in your system. You can buy it on Amazon or whatever. I don't suggest that you run out and do that, because you should consult with your physician and your, you know, your medical professional before you take any of these nutrients in supplement form, because they're very powerful. And you may have a pre-existing, underlying condition. You might have high blood pressure and take too much of that L-tyrosine. You see that? The serotonin, the precursor is, 5-HTTP, which is an amino acid that helps your body to create tyrosine and things. I mean, not tyrosine, but serotonin, which will help you. But speak to your health professional, to help put a good diet with supplements, and you will find that you will get rid of that grieving, very soon. Time by itself will not change. If time changes your grief, is because over time, the dopamine and serotonin production, agents in your body recuperated, but you can restore that quickly, and so on. You do not prove that you care for somebody by nurturing the illness that is making the physical illness that's giving you a negative emotional state. When you are under the power of grief, you're no longer thinking clearly. Your IQ drops 20, 30 points. And many of us cannot afford the loss of not a single point of the IQ. Come on now. Your performance quotient drops as well. Your ability, your immune system, go and Google these things. If you Google, grief and your neurotransmitters, grief on your immune system, grief on your cardiovascular system, you will find that every, thing that keeps you alive and healthy becomes depreciated, you see. So you don't want to nurture, you see, the things that keep your neurotransmitters deficient. You see that? If you broke a leg, you do something to fix it immediately. If you suffered an injury or cancer, you do something immediately and heavily to fix it. Grief is an emotional state that was created by a physiological state. So you must take physical actions and other actions to get rid of it as soon as possible. You cannot say that by doing things that's going to destroy my health. That's a proven fact now. You go to the Yellow Emperor Classics for Internal Medicine that was written over 2,000 years ago. Okay? You go into the Ayurveda. You go into all of these, ancient health systems. They knew way back then that the negative state of being called grief damages your health and your well-being. But we are living in a culture that separates the mind, body, spirit, psyche from each other. So you think, it's emotional. But that's a trick bag. What the heck you know about the science of emotions? You see, once you define something as emotional, you just put yourself in a trick bag because now you don't know what to do. And knowing what not to do is a stress, creating, mechanism. You see that when you have a challenge and you know what to do, you rise above the stress response. You see that? If you don't know what to do, it puts you into stress or nurtures the stress. So please begin to understand these things because, you see, our community, that's, people of color and poor people of all walks in life, all races and genders, whatever, just not simply Black people. We are all stressed out, having stress response to the inequities that the world is now, putting in place, operating under. You see that? So now that we know that stress, that grief is a form of stress, or the segue to stress. You see that? In other words, the stress response, or other, errors of living, like indulging, too many recreational drugs. Because all the recreational drugs like tobacco and alcohol and marijuana, whatever, they deplete the dopamine and affect the serotonin within you. So that's the key to addiction. You see, you smoke, why do people, chain smoke? smoke a whole pack of cigarettes in one day, because the nicotine, whatever else is in the cigarette, makes you secrete a lot of dopamine. Okay, but then now in another 50 minutes, you need another fix. So you light up another cigarette. Another 15 minutes, the dopamine is cascading through your system. You run out of dopamine, so you rev up the machine again by smoking another cigarette. Alcohol makes you feel good, because of it releases dopamine in your system. Anything that has the potential to be pleasurable will cause you to secrete the dopamine to manifest the pleasure. Don't forget, the so-called pleasurable thing, the so-called joyful thing in itself doesn't have the capacity to make you feel joyful or pleasurable. The body got to secrete the dopamine first, the serotonin first, then you feel good. Understand it about yourself. Please do not understand more about, computer programming than how to hack your brain. Hack your brain. Jumpstart the feel-good mechanism in your brain. So we're all subject to losing a loved one, or losing, a pet, or spouse, losing a relationship, our career, a good job, we trash our car and we can't get a new car, whatever. All of these things can cause you to, have a problem, because now you need lots of dopamine and serotonin to be in equilibrium, to maintain that yin-yang equilibrium within your system. You see that? So the first thing that you need, there's a science of how to avoid that or fix it. The first thing that you have to do is to change your self-image. Right now, you identify with the psychical part of your being, the human part of your being, meaning you identify with that part of your being that affirms that you are controlled by your emotions and sensations. That's the human identity. And as long as you identify with the human part of your being, grief will be a natural response to losses. But you see, if grief causes you injury and illness and lowers your IQ and your performance quotient, then it cannot be natural to you, because nothing that harms you can be natural. It's natural to the psychical part of you, the human part of you, but you have another part called the spiritual part of you, the divine part of you. You see that? If you have, nurtured the divine part of you, the spiritual part of you enough, you will not experience the deep hurt. Yes, a beloved one dies, it's going to hurt you. But how deep that pain is, how long it lasts, because it cannot last for too long. It should not hurt so much that you're shocked into immobility and shocked into paralysis or whatever, because now you can't function well anymore. If you have, found the right spiritual mechanism, the right spiritual teachings, you will keep the pain at a minimum, and you will keep the pain short and recover your well-being. Because you see, the best way for you to show that you care from the loss of a loved one is to do something constructive for them. Have a memorial for them. Have an event to, glorify their name and their, what they have done and so forth, as opposed to sitting crying and crying. Crying is nothing else but a stress valve from the psychic, from your old, evolutionary, past. It's a short, it relieves you. It's like tobacco. It relieves you of the pain for a short while, but you keep crying and crying and crying because it doesn't permanently remove the stress and the pain. So, but if you learn about yourself and the science of managing your life, you see that your brain and your psyche and your mind, then you will know that you need to get rid of it, because it does you no good but lots of harm. So you need to involve yourself in a spiritual system that will shift your self-identity from the psychic part of you, the psychical part of you, the so-called human part of you that says, I'm controlled by my emotions direct my actions and so forth. That's the darkness. You want your identity shifted over to the spiritual part of you, which says I'm a divine being capable of, rising above my emotions, my sensuality, and so forth. I'm a divine being capable of taking direction over my destiny, changing my destiny, controlling my mind, reprogramming my emotional responses. You've done some of that. You've reprogrammed you're no longer afraid of XYZ. You're no longer control of XYZ. You've done that. What you need now is a system that will make it a global response, not just simply a short-term limited response. It's not, I'm no longer afraid of this and that. It's, I'm no longer afraid. Full stop. You see that? So that's what the Ma'at, the 11 laws of health, wealth, and success will do for you. Help you to change your identity. The next thing that you need to do to avoid grief or to shorten the grief response within you, meaning, that pain, that sorrow, is to then change your mind. Okay, your mind has been programmed with lots of false ideas about grief, about life in general, by your society. So you find yourself, when you're grieving, accepting thoughts that pop into your mind saying, oh, my life will never be the same. Again, I don't know, what to do. I will be in pain forever. You see that? I can't help myself. You say things like that. It's not true. Okay? If you, before the loss of a loved one, you were a vibrant, vigorous worker for your social group, doing good things for your society, you can continue to do that. You see that? After a loved one dies, you see that? After you're separated, after you divorce, after you've lost something very important. You do not, I remember years ago when I first started on this journey, a lady, I was sitting in a coffee shop and in a bar stool next to me. This lady was crying and crying, and I looked at her, she looked at me and she said, my son died. I said, so I gave her, I didn't say condolences, because condolences means I'm hurting along with you. There are more positive things to say to somebody as to my condolences. Say something, that shows that she can rise above the pain, and that you will assist her in rising above the pain. You see that? Okay, as opposed to my prayers for your well-being and recovery, are with me. May they be with you. As opposed to, that knee-jerk response, my condolences. So I told her that, and she says, well, my son, he was the youngest. He was my pet. He was my favorite. And I said, oh, you have a children? She said, you have 3 other daughters. I said, how old are they? She said, well, 20, 25. I said, well, they still need you. They are at that point where they are just shifting from teenage and young adults to full adults. And that is one of the most trying time, in the life of a person. And going from being dependent to being independent. You made that shift. You're the best person to help them make that shift. So you have to learn to put into perspective. I say how to truly remember the good things about your son, which will make you smile and laugh. You see that? And help you to regenerate so that you can take care of your daughters. See, you have more to live for you. And when you take care of your daughters and you can then reap benefits from their laughter, their smiles, and the grandchildren they can give you, and you can do, I said that the thing in life is to do good unto others, and you lose that when you nurture their pain, which is just simply nurturing. These are the thoughts that keep the neurotransmitter production centers, you see, in deficit mode. So you need to reprogram your brain. Our course, the 11 laws of health, wealth, and success, there are affirmations that will awaken and strengthen the 11 faculties of your spirit to, from within you, change your mind, your way of thinking. You see that when you have a divine ID and you have awakened the spiritual faculties within you, you will automatically find yourself thinking and speaking spiritually correct, positive thoughts. But even thinking about it, just simply roll off your tongue, pop into your mind. You say when you need them and when somebody else needs them, and even when you don't even need them, to remind you that you're a divine being. The next thing that you must do is to, then change your psyche, working directly on your psyche. You see that? That's energy work on energy. You see, there is word or thoughts, ideas work on the energy part. Energy works on thoughts, but then there's energy on energy. That's what we do when we meditate. When you meditate, when you alter your state of, when you go into an altered state of consciousness, you see that, okay, that's working energy on energy directly. You see that? And science has begun to study that for several decades now. Our psychologists and physiologists in the soma psychotic and psychosomatic arena have been working on how meditation and yoga, you see, affects stress and grief. You see that? You can Google, neurotransmitter and meditation, and go to the website of the NIH. That's the National Library of Medicine. The National Library of Medicine. There's an extensive article, with a downloadable PDF that you can, take, hold of to learn that. You see, there are a lot of scientists. You just don't want to have hope and wishes and faith that, time will not make your grief go away. You see, if in time your grief goes away, it's because at some point your neurotransmitter agents recovered. But that's a process that you must, liven up. And you want to recover quickly, because if you don't, then there will be scars and problems left. It can become chronic. So there are people who are hurting deeply 20, 30 years after the loved one has died, after the dog died, never recovered, because you're nurturing the negative within you as opposed to nurturing the divine spiritual parts of you. So yes, learn, go to the NIH, that's the medical, the National Library of Medicine. You might say, well, that doesn't spell out NIH. I don't know why, but that's the way they put it, and so forth. The NIH, the doctors, behind that article, they use EEGs, and MRIs to study the effect that meditation had on the brain centers that control the recovery from grief. They say that. You also have to watch your diet. There are a lot of dietary things that are precursors of dopamine and serotonin. There are many, foods that are very rich in amino acids. I know that the nutritional, the nutritional industry, they want you to eat lots of eggs and meat and things of that nature, saying these are first class protein. But the thing is, if you understand the structure of your teeth and your digestive system, your digestive system is studied by structure and function that you are a frugrarian, meaning a fruit and nut eater, primarily. You see that? There's a book by Henry Ward Carrington, say Carigton, Henry Ward Carrington, The Natural Foods of Man. It's out of print now. His foundation is still selling the book. There are free PDFs of the book online, but buy it through the foundation so that the people who are trying to keep his life and his work alive can get some monies to keep to glorify the great work he does. But that book, The Natural Foods of Man, is a deep dive into the structure, the function and form of the digestive system that will convince anybody that the natural foods of man, the way your teeth are formed and what they form created to make, is to eat nuts as the main source of protein. I know that nutritionists who are not properly trained will say we're eating too much nuts and seeds will give you too much omega-6. That's not true. If you eat enough, fruits raw, so you don't damage the amino acid. That way you get first-class amino acid that's not been damaged by cooking. So when you eat all that meat and that egg, the heat damages, the protein, just not simply, damaging the protein, but also creates, other toxins, from the chemical reactions to the heat that they don't want to tell you about. You see that? Okay. They call it xenobiosis. Okay. Xenobiotics, meaning foreign, things that are foreign to life are created from cooking, amino acids and starches and things of that nature. So a major part of your diet must be raw fruits, raw vegetables, raw proteins coming mainly from nuts and seeds. Study Herbert Carrington's book, and you will learn, the length of your digestive system, and the length of the digestive system, in ratio to the length of the entire body is a geometrical rule that tells you, how quickly the food is supposed to pass through and things of that nature, the nature of your enzymes and things of that nature. If you eat the nuts, okay, even though you're vegan, you might want to eat some omega-6 and omega-3s and EP and DHA supplements. Yeah, there are fish, from the cod, the liver, and things of that nature. But one of the major causes of illness is runaway, inflammation from not balancing, your omega-3s with omega-6 and things of that nature. Omega-6 produces, inflammation as a healing reaction, and the omega-3s keep that inflammation in check to achieve its goal. So inflammation as an illness comes from, too much omega-6 and not enough omega-3s to balance them and keep them in check. Go and study on the University of Google, and iTunes. It's all up there. You'll see that. Other things that you must do: yoga, qigong, exercise, cardiovascular exercise, aerobics, strength exercise, things of that nature. You see that? Because when your dopamine is low, you want to sit in the corner and mope and weep and things of that nature, as opposed to when you get up and you exercise and do yoga and do aerobics, strength exercise. The strength exercise releases the chi, the life force, throughout your body and enlivens the brain and things of that nature and so on. So, you lose a loved one, a dear event in your life. There are these things that you can do and must know that you got to take action and teach others, because we're living in a pandemic of grief. That grief is causing susceptible individuals to go out and cause more harm. If you look at the statistics, you find that a lot of young people who are committing crimes, is as a response to have suffered tremendous loss in their lives. You see that? Okay, young man loses the mother when he was not ready to go out and live on his own, and goes out and kills 50 people with an AR rifle. Go look it up. It's all there. So my beloved, I just want to leave you with the final words before the Q&A session here, that, how, what grief does to you has been known for thousands of years, and how to combat it, has been known for thousands of years. In the African system, if you go into the spiritual literature, which is the oldest spiritual literature in the world, the spiritual books of ancient Egypt, our beloved scriptures, much older than any other scriptures that have been produced. Meditations to Heteru, to Nethet. You see that? Okay, was a major source of healing from stress and grief. You see, as a matter of fact, not indulging grief and stress was one of the 42, declarations of freedom from sins, incorrectly called negative confessions by the Western man. In the Yoruba tradition, for example, you would get up and, do rituals to Oshun, that Yoruba counterpart of Heveru. You see that to avoid and heal yourself of grief. You just didn't sit there. A tradition that we brought with us from Africa that's still alive in New Orleans today is that if you see a funeral, you will see people going on, marching very somber and very sad, with the corpse to the burial ground. And after the loved one was put into the ground, right after that, they struck up lively music and they danced their way from, the graveyard back to the repast. And they had a wonderful, joyous, raucous time at the repast, meaning that the pain of the loss of the loved one was something that should come to an end once you put the loved one into the ground, because there are means and ways to repair that pain, to go, ahead of that pain, to get rid of that pain, because that pain means that there's something wrong in your physiological being and you need to put a stop to it, because indulging the pain, which is indulging that which is depreciating your IQ, your health, the ability to be of good to yourself and others, cannot be natural to you. Nothing that can harm you is good to you. Show your love and your care for the beloved one by having a nice memorial, a big party, maybe every year or every 5 years or every 10 years. Just not putting, a nice stone on their grave. Have a big celebration. You see that? Remember them and write a script full of the things that remembering your loved one made you smile and made you laugh, and share that document with others. My beloved, bring your questions so that we can have a nice dialogue. Hotep.
Well, thank you, Shekim Shekim, for that enlightening conversation. And you already answered my question just now. I do want to bring to everyone's attention, we have a sister with us, Angela Sheely, and Duanatir, God bless you. She says that she just lost her father on Saturday. So I'm sure this is a very timely conversation for her.
Absolutely. First thing she needs to be is at peace. And the main part of the Mount 11 Laws, Health and Wealth and Success course will help her to be at peace. We'll give her the mantra, the affirmations, how to visualize her person moving forward, as well as to also gain a benefit, another benefit, you see, from doing this work, because she will energize herself. The next step will be to awaken and strengthen the divine identity within us, the third module, so that she can shift her identity from the psyche, the human part that wants to keep crying and moping or whatever, to the part of her being that knows that, she is a divine being, a spiritual being, you follow what I'm saying, that has a lot to give to others, and she has to re-energize herself to do that. You see that? If she takes, Angela, if you take stock of what you could lose and what others could lose if you don't go back to your formal state, you will then not be able to see that nurturing your divinity and not your human part of being should be a response to the loss of your father. You see that?
So we join many of the people in the class tonight with envisioning you taking full advantage of this knowledge and successfully continuing with your life. Shekim, we have some, while these questions are coming in, I did want to ask, some people appear not to grieve, or they tend to hold everything inside. Can you just speak a little bit about the difference between transcending grief or responding to the loss the positive way, and suppression?
Yes. In other words, in other words, you say not to grieve. You say not to grieve is not the goal. The goal is to regain your joyful, vibrant, natural state. I see that. For some people, you might not see them crying and so forth, right? But you will see that they have changed their routine. They're no longer socializing. They're no longer, doing certain things that they should be doing or used to do, whatever. They haven't gone back to their productive, natural, harmonious life that they had before. So they are grieving, you see, without the crying and, outward, show. You see that? When your life goes back to its natural state where you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and enjoying your life socially and so forth, then that's the state that we're aiming for.
True.
You see that?
And we have Brother Nefer. He asks, is unchecked grief a pathway to PTSD also?
Well, grief is the form of PTSD. That's Nefer, right?
True.
Yes, Nefer. Grief is a form of PTSD. It is a post-traumatic stress disorder, meaning that in other words, and I'm glad the question come up because it's the definition of stress. The popular definition of stress is wrong, which I devoted a book, Stress Free for Life, to show that the definition of stress is wrong. You see that? And grief needs to be incorporated, as a post-stress disorder. You see that? Okay, meaning that one of the people think that stress is fight, flight, but the third response is called freeze. Fight, flight, freeze, meaning becoming incapacitated, becoming paralyzed. And that's what grief is, a form of paralysis. You see that, where you're no longer living your life, your natural, normal life like you should. You see that? And as long as that is produced, now you are in a post-stress syndrome disorder.
And we have Maurice Hall Bay. He asks, can Het Heru mantras be used for Nebt Het?
Well, yes, absolutely. Nebt Het and Het Heru are one and the same. It's just that Nebt Het means the lady or the master of the house. You see that? Neb is the Lord or the master, and Net is the female master of the house. You see that? What house? The house of the psyche. You see that? Is ruled by Het Heru. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So meaning that, the house of your human life is your joy, your ability to manifest joy. You see that? To visualizing it. Visualizing a person as joyful, smiling and laughing in difficult situations, that's Net Het. Het Heru is the action of generating the joy and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. Different names for the same things looked at from different perspectives. But the mantra is the Het Heru mantra.
And Sasen Anki Hetep says, is sleep paralysis a stress response as well?
Depends on what is causing it. Sleep paralysis, becomes, it's a neurohormonal, it's a neurological situation that, when we say sleep paralysis, we are defining, we're giving a name to something that is a catchphrase for different causes. So the doctor has to look into what is causing it. You see that? It may not be a stress response. It could be something else, some toxin in the body or whatever is in the nervous system.
Mm-hmm. And Raymond asks, it's generally said that when transforming away from tobacco, weed, alcohol, etc., the body will encounter symptoms of withdrawal leading to illness and anger. Is there a way to withdraw and avoid such damaging effects?
Okay, very good question. Well, once you stop eating something, even if it's something good for you, the body begins to release certain toxins associated with that. You see that? So if you're going to withdraw from alcohol and tobacco, do it little by little, so you don't get, because once you stop the nicotine, or the alcohol, the body begins to kick out those poisons. You see that it was keeping, hidden away somewhere to keep them out of circulation. So now they're all in circulation. So you want to do it gradually over time. There are certain homeopathic remedies that will help you to eliminate, alcohol, which is homeopathic form of walnuts, and then the homeopathic, Nux vomica, which you can buy on Amazon, will help you to detoxify from tobacco. You see that, as well as coffee and things of that nature. And you can Google, let's say nutraceuticals for tobacco, withdrawal, nutraceuticals for alcohol withdrawals, natural supplements for withdrawing from, all of those things. You can find them on Amazon and on the internet. We're living in a phenomenal age where a lot of information that otherwise will not be at our disposal are now available. You see that?
And Lenore asks, what are your thoughts on connecting with crossed loved ones via mediumship? Do you recommend it?
Okay, the thing is what is said by mediumship. Okay, first of all, mediumship is becoming a medium or cultivating mediumship is something that I cannot give generically, because mediumship is opening your psyche up. You see that? That if it's not done a certain way, with a certain lifestyle, with the proper way, you can open yourself up to certain things you'd rather not open yourself up to. You see that? So that's one step that we have to get past before I can say yes or no connecting with, a cross loved one. You see that? Okay. The thing is, what you mean by cross loved ones, it depends on what you mean exactly in that situation. You see that? But psychically connecting with somebody should always be messages, visions sent to for good purposes. It should never involve somebody in your meditations unless it is, a vision of well-being for that person. You with me?
And Shekim, on that note, you mentioned that traditional societies have extensive rituals that they use to deal with processing grief and transcending the negative side. Is that connection with the deceased something that, if it happens spontaneously, that you would have any recommendations for people with the course?
What happens spontaneously? What is it that happens spontaneously?
Communication or visitation from the deceased.
You mean you're sleeping and you have a visitation?
Right.
When then your psyche will respond automatically, reflexively, because when you're sleeping, you're not using your will anymore. That's a psychical reaction. So it all depends on where you are spiritually, psychically, what you have programmed into your psyche, and so on. It's not something you can plan for unless you are on a high level initiate.
Too. Okay, and we have some questions regarding some of the recommendations that you gave. This one was about the need for a raw diet, raw food. Ifa Kolade asks, nuts and seeds, lectins cause issue in the body. in the digestive system. So if you have some issues with raw nuts and seeds.
Well, if you Google or go on the internet and search for lectins, you find that lectins are found in every single item that we consume. Lectins are certain substances that the body, makes to protect itself from being eaten by others. You see, things in this world don't want to be eaten, so they have this protective, chemicals called lectins. You see that? The thing is the best, and nuts and seeds are not high in lectins. You see that? To begin with. One of the nuts that are highest in lectins is almonds, but the lectins are in the skin. So if you use what's called, blanched almonds, which is nothing else but almonds that they have removed the skin, where the most of the lectins are, then you reduce the amount of lectins. But the thing is, if you are going to use nuts, as your main source of protein, okay, number one, you should change them on a daily basis. You see that? Or eat the ones with less lectins, like walnuts. You see that? Okay. And then now they are soaking, protocols where you can soak the nuts overnight or for several hours. Okay. How long should I soak my nuts to remove lectins should be a search phrase. And you get certain tables that tell you this seed should be soaked for and things of that nature. So one of the problem is that, people today in the Western world do not know the technology of natural eating. In Africa and in South America and the Americas and Asia and so forth, a lot of these raw foods were first fermented, which pre-digest them and neutralizes the lectins and things of that nature. You see that? Okay, so we don't have this technology. We just we are the most that we know about food production is paying for them at McDonald's. That's much food. But in ancient times, almost everything was was prepared through fermentation and soaking and things of that nature. But everything that you eat has lectins in it. Every single thing. The thing is to avoid the foods with the highest amount of lectin and the most dangerous lectins. You see that? And if you study lectins through let's say Google Scholar, you will find in-depth lectures on lectins, and you'll find that a lot of lectins are really good for you. They do good things in your body. You see that, as opposed to negative things. You see.
And on that note, Shechem, you mentioned the corruption of proteins when cooking is involved. So how would that apply to cooking, for example, soybeans to make tofu, or even preparing any beans or peas by cooking them?
Yeah, if you go on the internet and search, how to prepare beans, okay, and foods to remove the lectins, you're going to find that dry roasted peanuts, for example, have almost zero lectins. After peanuts are high in lectins, but once you dry roast them for a certain length of time, okay, you find that they have zero to very negligible amounts of lectins. You see that? Okay. And that goes to all foods. Soya beans, once you produce, when you prepare them for tofu, are extremely low in lectins. People say, oh, don't eat soya beans, don't eat, tofu because of lectins and da. Well, Okinawa, which is an island in Japan, they have the highest rate of centenarians. Not only people living over 100, but in good, youthful state of health. And guess what they eat every day for protein? The main source of protein every day is tofu. It did not emasculate the men. It did not give the women, cancer. As a matter of fact, the phytohormones in soya beans, once cooked, and tofu, cannot, become biologically active in the animal body. You see that? Because they're phytohormones. But what they do is that the phytohormones from soya beans, and tofu and soya isolate, protein isolate, will incorporate themselves into the hormone receptors and block, the incorporations of excess estrogen. You see that, which is the main culprit behind prostate cancer and you see the female, cancers and things of that nature. And that's why the Okinawans and people all throughout Asia that eat a lot of tofu have the lowest rate of cancer and illnesses from these so-called lectins and so forth.
Mm. And for those who would say that, well, we're African and they're Asian and our body doesn't respond the same way, is there any basis to that?
Well, have them produce the verification. There are a lot of things that people say that have never been subjected to evidence. Nobody did a study on them, and things of that nature. Like you have to eat foods that are grown in your locality. That's not true. People all over the world have been eating things that were not grown in your locality or in that season. You see that? Okay. People say a lot of things that are providing, the studies, the analytics, okay, and so forth. So before you accept these things, ask for the facts, get the numbers, where were the studies done, who published them, and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. So Leon asks, what if a person has celiac disease?
Well, celiac disease, comes, if you have celiac disease, then your interest has to do with gluten. You see that? So then you need to avoid foods, that have gluten, meaning whole wheat bread and wheat bread of all kinds, spelt and so forth, and rye bread and anything that has gluten in it. You see that? Eat more gluten, naturally gluten-free products. chia seeds, and so forth. You see that. Quinoa, and so on.
Okay, and let's see here. Okay, and Richard says, I got the whole course. I've been doing the meditations, reciting the affirmations with the mantras, and I feel like I'm under siege from family. I want to be angry, but I can't give in to it because doing that would violate the law of Amen. But I believe I'm being deprived of justice.
He says he's on the siege from family. And he wants to be angry. I would like to hear, in what way is he on the siege? Is it on the siege because he's doing his meditations or from other things and so forth? He wants to be angry. He needs to combat that. Richard, you need to combat that wanting to be angry with the understanding of the science, of your being. You want to do something that's going to damage, your health, your success in life, which will be worse than what your family could ever do to you. So hold on to the peace. And once you hold on to the peace, you will find that you will find a solution to what is going on, with your family. How that solution will come about, no one can say. You might find yourself, out of the blue, being able to move somewhere else, or maybe they change their minds, and something will happen. Hold on to the peace, okay? Because you see, don't nurture the I want to be angry thought. Nurture the affirmation that reminds you that you're peaceful by nature, and anger will make you sick, will lower your intelligence, will lower your ability to perform and be successful And that will be the real tragedy in your life. So hold on to the truth, Brother Richard.
All right, just a couple more. I know we're running out of time. And then says, not showing grief has caused some to say my person is heartless and may have affected a relationship with family members. What response is best to give those who don't appreciate when we do not show grief?
Well, first of all, what is it? What is showing grief? Is it crying? If you cry and you cry and you cry, that's not proving that you care for the loved one. Okay. What is it? How do we show grief? That's what, brother, and then Seshem needs, and then Seshem needs to become very clear of. How do you show grief? Do you sit in the corner and mope? You follow what I'm saying? Do you get angry because things are not the way they used to be? How do you show grief? Those are the myths. Show your grief. The people who said, I'm showing grief, they haven't yet given a clear, positive, picture of what showing grief is. So if an ancestor can give us an example of what do they mean by showing grief, he will find the answer, in that statement itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he says, yes, crying and so forth.
Nobody can justify, attacking you for not crying because somebody dies. As a matter of fact, in our society, our members have learned to cut the grief real short, and they are the ones that end up, taking the lead in the burial, things that need to be done to, for the deceased. They're the ones that help the family to recover, help members in the family to recover, because they maintain their energy, their vitality, they protected their health. You see that? So doing things that is going to make you sick and deprive you of your vitality and your ability to move on, is what showing grief is. You see that? So the thing is, if they, you need to keep doing your meditation, showing your person, smiling and laughing, when appropriate. And you cannot do it, because people don't understand, then do it inwardly. And things eventually will change.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Another student made a note that people grieve differently, and I can remember a situation where a young person died, and one of their friends was laughing, and people didn't understand that some people react in a very different way. It doesn't mean that they're not grieving.
Laughing at what?
Just laughing awkwardly,
Well, laughing awkwardly is not correct.
No, I mean, yeah, out of place, not laughing at the person, but just as a reaction.
Well, somebody dies, right? Somebody dies, and if you're not crying, right, and moping, you are not showing grief. You see that? Okay. The thing is, if you're crying, you're grieving. Okay. Actually, the crying is what the body is trying to do to remove the grief, but it's not an effective way of removing the grief. You see that? Crying is a stress response valve to remove the stress, to remove the grief. That's the body attempting to recover itself. You see that? But you can help that process better by meditating, by doing yoga, by nurturing your spirit, your mind and so forth, so that you can think those thoughts that will help you to recover from something that will make you worse. You see that? So you cannot nurture the thoughts, showing grief is nurturing the thoughts that my life is no longer the same. I will never be the same. I will never recover from this. Why do you want to think those thoughts for? You see that? And it's not that people show their grief differently. Nobody has gotten a proper tutorial on what grief is and how to show it and how to get rid of it. There's no tutorial on people say, they do it differently.
Mhm.
So how do you have somebody explain to you what is it that is done that you are showing grief? What are you doing to show your grief?
Mhm.
You should ask somebody that. What must be done to show your grief? Because the definition of grief is not there. People don't know that grief is, a pathological response creating an emotional state.
Mhm. Okay, and one last comment, Shechem. Kesmeni says the anniversary of an attempted homicide on my life has my person pondering that they could have killed me and no one would have known or cared. How does my person process such anniversaries?
Okay. In other words, the 11 laws of health, wealth, and success will teach the person that if you know of an event that's coming up, where there will be, the chance of having a trigger that will cause you to respond, with negative emotions and thoughts. Then now write a script, a meditation script,
Mhm.
showing you that on this day, the coming of this day will make you affirm. And, laws that will help to strengthen your spiritual identification. You see that? And will help you to visualize your person living according to those spiritual laws and seeing your person, receiving a blessing, improving your career, your wealth, your relationship, whatever you need to improve in your life. You see that? Okay? And doing that meditation, because you see the anniversary of this attempted homicide, if you do not cultivate, if you do not directly cultivate, a positive response according to the spiritual laws, you will default to a human response. You see that? Which will be fear and worry and grief and things of that nature. So you have to take charge and define what your response is going to be to this possible trigger.
Mm.
You see that? And eventually it will come that every time you think about this homicidal attempt, whether it is an anniversary or at any time, it will trigger the law of Amen, the law of self, the law of Tehut, the law of sacred. You understand that? You see? It will trigger in your mind spiritual laws, truths, and not the law, and not the thoughts that tell you, oh man, I could have been killed, so and so. Those thoughts are not helpful.
Mhm. Wonderful. Wonderful for the council. All right. So we are well over time. So Shechem, I'm going to leave you with any final comments that you want to make for the audience.
Yes, this grief thing is pandemic. It's all over the world, and a lot of fallacies in it, such as people think that grieving is something that they do. You see that? Something that they was not clear to them. What is it that they're doing? If they meditated clearly upon it, they will see that what they're doing is nourishing the thoughts that keep the problem, the bad, the sorrow, the pain in place. You see that? That's what grieving is. Accepting thoughts, nourishing thoughts, justifying thoughts that keep the pain going. That is like if you have a physical injury, you keep doing things to keep that part of your being from healing. If you are inadvertently cut yourself very bad in your arm, you want to heal that real quickly. You want to bandage it up. You want to sew it up. You do not keep doing things, hitting on it and doing things that will keep it from healing itself. So once you experience a loss, do everything that you can do that will remove the pain, because feeling the pain doesn't mean that you care more. If you have brother A and brother B, and brother A is nurturing their pain, he is not showing that he cares more than Brother B, who might be having a memorial. You see that? For the deceased, who will be, nurturing, family, a photo portrait showing the good things about this person so that we can, remember that person very well. Having a family meeting where we show slides, of the brother or movies, the brother, the deceased, all the good things. You see that? But the person who's sitting down there keeping thoughts that is lowering their ability to regenerate, to bounce back. When you keep that going, you are keeping the people that depend upon you, you see, from benefiting from you. So grief is something that happens to you, not something that you do. So it's not something you want to keep going because it does you no good. Peace and blessings.
Thank you so much. And I understand on Thursday we will have a follow-up for those of you that are in the Ma'at 11 Laws course. We have member-only webinars where we really dig into the application of what we talked about today. So Shechem, we'll be following up this Thursday with
That's correct, because you just can't tell somebody to suck it up. No, you have to give them, the meditations, you see that will, from the deepest level of their being, make the changes, eradicate the pain, take them out of the sorrow mentality. You see that? How to manage your diet and your supplements. You see that? Okay. If I suffer a tremendous loss, then I need to make sure that I am sleeping at nature's appointed time to go to sleep, which is 11 o'clock p.m., sidereal time. You see that? Okay. So, because, we don't, the sort of sleep is the part of the day where you replenish your psyche, your body, and your anabolism, and assimilate your lessons. But the body does it best when you sleep at the time that was appointed for your body to do that. We break that law all the time, staying up late for one reason or another, and so on. But when you suffered a loss, a big loss, and your body has to do a major healing, then one thing that you have to do is to go to sleep at the appointed time of nature. You see that? Now, once you recover, you can go back to whatever's keeping you up late at night if you think you have to, and things like that. You understand? So there are many things you can do. You see that? Okay, we're doing the cobra pose and the plow pose help you. Yes, they will, because it will help to stretch your body and improve circulation of energy and blood and things of that nature. You see that? Okay, and if you cannot afford to go to the gym, there is a 7 Scientific, app. It's called 7 Scientific. We're 7 minutes a day exercise. You see that? 7 minutes a day exercise has been proven by universities and medical studies will be better than an hour in the gym. And you need to do the exercise to recover yourself from grief or any stressful event that you have gone through.
All right. So on behalf of everyone in the chat and online, Shechem, I want to thank you for this evening and wish you a great evening, and say to you in the Kemetic words of power and peace, Anet Sharak.
Thank you. Peace and blessings.
All right. So if you are new with us, you can go to www.ma'at11laws.com and you can sign up for this course, and that will enable you to come to the class on Thursday. That is for course members only, right? So this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we'll have a course member webinar. It will be focused on the application of what was spoken about tonight, and you'll be able to follow along in your course workbook and have the material to really get yourself on the path to handling grief properly. Thank you all for being with us, and have a great evening.
says the Kemetic religion. But the early part of man's life is dominated by the human faculties and limitations. The essential focus of the ancient Egyptian religion is then the transcendence of the human stage and the realization of the true and final state, the divine nature. Divinity is realized by adherence to divine laws, and it confers upon man access to divine or superhuman abilities, the elevation of her mental abilities and talents, and qualifies her to enter into a partnership with God. Nefer, Volume 6, by Ra, Nefer. Amen. I am the manner in which Kemet was able to bring forth the men and women from all walks of life who were responsible for its superlative civilization. Unparalleled